Okay, welcome to Planet Geography. Let's deal with weathering. So before we get into the different types of weathering, let's just give ourselves a broad definition of what it is. So weathering is the breakdown of rock in situ. Now in situ means where it stands or where it lies. So in all of these examples, the rock is not moving or even really being moved as such. When you think of like hydraulic action or a river or a coast like this, it's simply being broken down by the weather. They can also subdivide weathering into three categories: chemical, mechanical, and biological. Each one is different, and you need to really know an example of each, okay? So let's get into it. Chemical weathering. The thing to know about chemical weathering is that rain has a pH. It's not neutral. It's not 7 on the pH scale. Rainwater absorbs carbon dioxide. That's why we have acidic rain, okay? And it becomes weakly acidic. And it may fall at pH 5.5, for example. That is acidic. And when it lands on our rock, it can dissolve. And that's how this kind of erosion takes place. It can dissolve the limestone slowly, okay? This creates kind of limestone pavements. I'll flash up an image of a limestone pavement now. You can find these in Yorkshire in England. And that kind of rounds out what chemical weathering is. It's carbonation is the process we call it. It's linked to acidic rain falling and dissolving limestone. The next is mechanical weathering. So, mechanical weathering, the example that we always tend to use is freeze-fall weathering. So you need to know what freeze and fall mean. Now, freeze is, I hope you know this as a GCSE student, when water turns from a liquid to a solid. Thawing is when it does the opposite, from a solid to a liquid, and it happens at 0. So what's going to happen in this area, particularly in the kind of the highlands, the north of England, is that at night time, it's going to drop below 0. In the daytime, it's going to rise above 0. So what's going to happen is precipitation, snow or rain is going to fall into our cracks. At night time, it's going to freeze, and that is going to increase its volume. When we freeze water, we should know from physics, its volume increases. And then in the daytime, it's going to warm up, it's going to thaw, and its volume is going to decrease. Yep. And then that process is going to restart in a cycle, day after day, year after year. And that freeze thaw, that is going to push the cracks apart until eventually they break apart. Big rocks into small rocks is erosion and creates sediment. Okay? I'm just going to flash up some examples of freeze-fall weathering. Again, the Highlands of Scotland is a good example of this. Take a look at the image. Okay, the last one let's get on to is biological weathering. This is the one I like. This is the one I used to talk about in my exam. So, biological weathering can be done through plant roots. So what will happen is the tree will have seeds. The seed will fall into our crack. And so that's something definitely worth mentioning. All of this, all three processes require cracks in the surface, and that's where they do their work, okay? So we have a seed. Now from seeds come trees. So this could be a bush, it could be a tree. It doesn't really matter so much. What's going to happen is as it grows, its roots, the thing that absorbs nutrients and water from the soil, are going to grow. And they're going to grow into those cracks. They're going to expand over time. And eventually, as the tree gets bigger and bigger, it's going to push those cracks apart until it falls apart, leaving you with 2 pieces of rock, that's erosion, 2 pieces of sediment. Okay? Again, I'll flash up an example now of kind of biological weathering. There's loads of examples. You can find examples all around the world. For example, we can talk about Dorset coastline in the UK, for example, as as our example. And that kind of rounds out weathering. There are more examples, but I think if you have an example of each of the 3 types, that is important. You know, as a geography teacher, when I teach this in lessons, I tend to go really, really quickly through it because we just don't have the time. So do maybe take this upon yourself to revise. Remember, we have chemical weathering, we have mechanical weathering, and we have biological weathering. All right, guys, I hope that helps. We're going to jump into an exam question now, as always. I'll see you there. Question appeared in literally last year, 2023's Geography B paper. So, explain one way in which rock is weathered. Bug the question as always, no matter how easy you think the question is, bug it. Box the command word, underline the keywords, and glance at the marks. Explain. That's your command word. One way, rock weathered. Okay, so really this is just a question saying, explain to me one way in which it is weathered. We glance at the marks, there'll be a point, and there'll be a because. 1 mark for the point, 1 mark for the development. So, let's see what we could have got. Pause this, as always, read the mark scheme, see if you'll be able to access this in the exam. Okay, assuming that you've done that, let's crack on. So here we got frost weathering, so you'd get the mark for freeze-thaw weathering as well there. Biological weathering, and carbonic weathering as well, or acid rain. Okay, I think there's a bit of leeway in what you call these, and the marks will be awarded. Okay, so let's go with kind of freeze-thaw weathering. We can see frost weathering takes place when the liquid water enters the rocks and joints. So joints and cracks kind of again is kind of 2 words that can be interchangeable. And then it freezes and expands, fracturing the rock. Okay, that's nice. Let's see kind of the version that I went for. So one blank is, always use a word from the question. One way is, let's go. One way is biological weathering, which involves roots. So I'm going to get a mark for kind of biological weathering, but I do need to add a little bit about the roots as well, okay? Because biological weathering can mean a lot of things. It could also include like animals creating homes in the rock and stuff like this. So I'm going to link it to the roots because these push the rock cracks apart over time until they break. So what I would say here is, again, cracks and over time is probably enough to get me the second mark. Maybe I should say joints, but for me, cracks is fine. Again, if I was marking this, I was a very kind examiner, I would have given full marks to this candidate. Okay, hope that helps. Like and subscribe as always. There'll be more exam content coming up as we move towards those GCSEs. All right, take care.